The boy's name was William, born in a country called Malawi, filled with poverty and drought. Not only was there no electricity, but water resources were also very scarce. The entire village relied on a single well for their drinking and living water. The only electronic devices people owned were radios, their sole channel for obtaining information from the outside world. At just 13 years old, William knew how to repair various small appliances. He could fix the neighbors' broken radios to supplement the family income. However, the noise woke up his sleeping father. Faced with William's passion, his father did not blame him. He simply took the radio and walked alone in the fields, observing the changing weather. Due to the extreme climate, the crops had withered, and the corn on this land had become the family's only source of income. But as the drought worsened, corn yields also plummeted. The family had little savings left. Even so, his father still scraped together enough money for William's first semester tuition. Wearing a beautiful school uniform, William hugged his father excitedly. He then went to school. At the opening ceremony, the principal was giving an impassioned speech when it suddenly started to rain heavily. The principal told them to return to the classroom for lessons. However, after school, the science teacher asked William to pay the remaining tuition, or else he would be expelled by the school and no longer allowed to attend classes. It turned out that his father had only paid for 1 week's tuition, and William's grades were also poor. He wanted to use the evenings to catch up, but the darkness made it difficult to see the words. He wanted to light an oil lamp, but his mother told him they could no longer afford kerosene. In order to study better, he and his good friend went to the landfill to look for useful items. In the pile of garbage discarded by the tobacco company, William found a water pump and a discarded battery, but no tools to help with studying at night. William returned to the village just in time for the chief's meeting with the villagers. It turned out that the tobacco company, in order to cut costs and reap huge profits, was buying the last of the local trees at a low price of $1.50 per ton to use as fuel for drying tobacco. But the chief stated that the rainy season was coming, and these trees were used to resist floods and sandstorms. If all the trees were cut down, the crops in the fields would lose protection and be completely submerged by floods caused by heavy rains. He absolutely could not let them proceed with the logging. William's father also strongly agreed with the chief's words. However, some villagers who only cared about immediate interests did not consider the long-term future at all. Despite the chief and William's father's dissuasion, they began signing one after another. Watching the trees being cut down before his eyes, although William felt very sad and angry, he was helpless. He could only go to the village gathering place and listen to the ball game with his companions to relieve his uneasiness. However, just as everyone was listening to the most exciting moment, the radio suddenly ran out of power and shut off. Everyone's eyes turned to William, who knew how to repair radios. He quickly ran home under the cover of night, found all the waste batteries in the house, and returned to the gathering place in the drizzling rain. After the game ended, William was surprised to see his sister dating the science teacher on his way home in the heavy rain. In the backward village, this was an embarrassing matter that would not only make them the laughingstock of everyone's conversations but also bring shame to the whole family. William decided to teach the teacher a lesson. The next day, he brought his friends, preparing to puncture the teacher's tires. However, kind-hearted William couldn't bring himself to do it. At this time, his friends suggested that they could take away his headlights. This would not only send him a warning but also provide William with a lighting tool for studying at night. William decided to do just that, but he found that the headlights could not be removed. Following the headlight wires, he discovered that the wires were not connected to the battery but to a silver device on the wheel. He had his friend quickly spin the tire. As the tire rotated at high speed and rubbed against the device, a faint beam of light gradually lit up. This discovery would completely change his life. Returning home, William overheard his parents' conversation at the bedroom door. Due to the poor harvest, the family had no more savings. This meant that William could not continue his schooling. The next day, William was permanently suspended by the principal for not being able to pay his tuition in full. The heavy rain continued to fall. The distant trees were submerged in the rain. Without the trees to block it, the rainwater gathered into countless streams, mercilessly flooding the fields. His father, braving the wind and rain, covered in mud, desperately dug drainage ditches in the fields, trying to find those seeds washed away by the water. But in the face of nature, all efforts seemed futile. His father was also helpless and could only look at his wife with guilt. However, life shrouded in misfortune seemed to have no turning point in sight. They had barely waited for the heavy rains to pass when they were met with summer drought. Months of scorching sun caused the newly sprouted corn seedlings to lay on the ground lifelessly. If this continued, the whole family would starve to death. His helpless father rode their only bicycle to find his friend at the auction site, but his friend could not provide much help. Instead, he told the father to prepare for the nationwide famine in advance. The father went to find the chief, hoping that when the president came to the village to campaign for votes, he could truthfully reflect the local disaster situation to obtain the president's help and avoid a repeat of the famine from 20 years ago. To figure out the light's power generation principle, William, who had been expelled from school, put on his school uniform and secretly slipped into the school. Found the science teacher. The teacher told him it was a dynamo, but the teacher didn't understand the dynamo's working principle either. He suggested William go to the library to look up relevant books, but expelled students could not enter the library. With no other way, William could only threaten the teacher by revealing his discovery that his sister Annie was dating him. To protect his reputation as a teacher, the teacher used himself as a guarantee to let William enter the library. Successfully entering the library, William found a book on energy utilization inside. Afterwards, William watched the tornado on the Gobi. While searching for dynamo materials at the garbage dump, On this day, to canvass votes for the upcoming election, the president came to William's village. With the people's enthusiastic cheers, the chief, as the representative, was invited on stage to speak. The chief praised the president's brilliant achievements. Praise after praise made the president feel very satisfied. Then the chief spoke of the local disaster of no harvest due to drought, and pleaded with the president to release emergency food to help the people survive the drought. However, the president felt this would cause his election defeat. He ordered his bodyguards to take the chief away. They took him to a place unseen by the crowd, and beat him. William and his father wanted to step forward to stop it, but instead received warning shots fired by the bodyguards. All the villagers began to flee. The president, protected by his bodyguards, left in a luxury car. Only the near-death chief remained, helplessly collapsing on the ground. Father finally understood the darkness of the world. Only self-reliance could change their current life, finally waiting for the corn in the field to mature. But the harsh weather in barren land resulted in only a small pile of harvested corn, far from enough to sustain the family's life. With no other choice, father could only replace the iron sheets on the roof with thatch, take the removed iron sheets to the market to sell for money. But the exponentially rising grain prices meant that even selling everything in the house would hardly get them through this famine, and at this moment, the radio broadcast news of the government denying the disaster. This made the fury in father's heart completely erupt. Disregarding his wife and daughter's dissuasion, he stubbornly insisted on joining the protest march. After father left, William went directly to the school. To speed up his research progress, William told the female teacher his idea. As long as he could use a windmill to charge a battery, he could drive a water pump to extract water. This way, the land drought problem could be easily solved. But without the science teacher's bicycle dynamo, nothing could proceed. The female teacher was also shocked by William's bold idea, and encouraged William to go to the classroom to find him. However, what they didn't know was, the science teacher had already resigned. Now he wanted to persuade Annie to elope with him, to return to the village together after earning enough bride price. But he was refused by Annie. William also wrote his idea on paper, hoping to persuade the science teacher. But because the science teacher had resigned, future science classes were all handled by the principal. The principal discovered William, who had been expelled, sitting in the corner of the classroom. In his view, the behavior of sneaking into class without paying tuition was theft. He shouted at William to leave immediately. Although William kept pleading that his father would pay the tuition, the principal still ruthlessly drove him out. The female teacher also pleaded for William at this moment. However, this could not move the principal's icy heart. William stood alone on the vast, boundless, drought-stricken land. His grand ideal, following the burial by wind and sand, became increasingly lost. And finally, under the pressure of public opinion, the government brought 2 truckloads of low-priced grain to alleviate the disaster. All the villagers rushed to buy it. Mother also took out the family's meager savings, telling William to ride his father's bicycle to rush and buy grain. However, when William hurriedly arrived, the grain from the first truck was already sold out. Villagers behind, afraid they couldn't buy grain, started desperately squeezing towards the grain warehouse. Fortunately, relying on his physical advantage, William squeezed in at the last moment. Although he successfully bought 15 kilograms of corn, the villagers outside were like zombies. Once he exited, the grain would be snatched away. The small William could only dismantle the warehouse's back door to escape. Meanwhile, father, on his way to the protest, witnessed with his own eyes people fighting each other over grain. He instantly thought of his vulnerable wife and children, left at home. He urgently urged the driver to turn back home. However, everything was already too late, because villagers had already broken into William's house, not only snatching the grain from his sister's arms, but even the corn harvested with such effort not long ago was completely stolen by this group. Mother sat helplessly on the ground, weeping bitterly, and the 15 kilograms of corn William had painstakingly bought became the family's last remaining food. Father counted the family's only remaining savings. It was barely enough for the whole family to eat only 1 meal a day. So mother proposed eating dinner. Because it was impossible to sleep on an empty stomach, William wanted to eat breakfast. His sister could no longer endure it. Disappointed, she ran out. She continuously blamed her father. If he hadn't stubbornly gone out to protest, they wouldn't face the possibility of being raped or killed. Mother angrily slapped her sister.
Abambo wako, amapanga zoti, atipulumutse. Ndiye! Ukuganiza ndinga kusiye ufedi njala, nichite kudula, mkono kuti udye. Kuti udziwe ndiwe mwana wanga.
The morning sun reddened the horizon. The real famine began to descend. William, catching birds in the field, could not catch a single bird. With no other way, father began praying to heaven for help. Before preparing to eat, William tried to secretly hide a piece of food for the dog. Father discovered and scolded him, saying if he dared feed any food to the dog, he would wring his neck. Helpless, William found his sister Annie late at night, hoping through his sister to borrow the science teacher's bicycle dynamo. Using it to drive the water pump, he could bring sufficient water to the fields to solve the famine. Seeing William's such determined eyes, his sister fell into unprecedented deep thought. Her heart finally made a difficult choice. When William returned home from chopping wood the next day, he found Mother standing outside, crying bitterly. Father also anxiously said he must find his daughter. It turned out his sister, to lessen the family's burden, only left a letter behind, and eloped with the science teacher. In the letter, she told her parents not to look for her. This way, there would be one less person to feed at home. William sorrowfully entered his sister's room, but discovered on the wooden table the dynamo he wanted. Only then did he understand. His sister had eloped with the teacher for his sake. The angry mother took William to find the principal, accusing the school's teacher of taking away her daughter. The guilty principal stated that the school would try its best to find the whereabouts of the science teacher and was willing to let William use the library for free. The previous female teacher had already resigned and left, but the battery she repaired for William was still on the table. William found all the relevant books and eagerly explained his plan to his companions. Although some said it was absolutely impossible, more people chose to believe in William because they had no other choice at that time. So everyone started working. They softened the water pipes to make fan blades and went to the junkyard to find missing parts. According to the knowledge in the books, they assembled a small windmill bit by bit. The moment the door opened, a strong wind poured into the room, and the windmill successfully started to rotate. The radio also emitted a miraculous sound driven by the windmill. Everyone cheered with joy. Perhaps under William's leadership, they could truly overcome the persistent famine. However, to pump water, a larger windmill was needed, so they still required a bigger gear. The father's precious bicycle became the key to solving the problem. So William showed his invention to his father and spoke out his thoughts. He had removed the batteries from the radio, yet it could still play sound clearly. His father looked at him in surprise. The boy explained that the wind was driving the fan blades to generate electricity. If he could replace the blades with larger ones, it could power a water pump to draw water from underground and irrigate the fields, solving the drought problem. However, it would require dismantling his father's only bicycle to use as part of the generator. When the father heard that his son wanted to take apart their only means of transportation, he angrily scolded the boy, saying his idea was unrealistic. Could this broken windmill really solve the difficulties caused by the drought? The boy retorted, These words completely infuriated his father, who directly pulled the boy up and threw him to the ground, even tossing away his invention. The father's words deeply hurt him, and he could only let his helpless tears flow. Was his life destined to be buried in this hopeless field? After learning about this, the companions also began to pack their bags and prepare to flee the famine. But now the whole country was short of food. Even if they fled, where could they go? Under William's persuasion, they decided to forcibly take the bicycle from the father. So a group of people went to find the father in a mighty manner, demanding him to hand over the bicycle. Unexpectedly, the father directly raised the hoe, and everyone fled in fright, leaving only William standing there, helplessly looking at his father. The scorching sun still rose, baking the earth. Even the yellow dog that had accompanied them for many years died of starvation. At this moment, there was only endless sadness and powerlessness in William's heart. Hunger was gradually taking away everything. The mother found her husband and told him about everything they had lost over the years.
Maluzi basi. Makolo wanga. Pamene ndina bora kuno. Kenaka minna. Kenaka ane. Chifuko chaina. Ai. Sindina. Nikukufa msani. Maluzima. Adzalika liti. Alibe chimene tapanga chabwino.
The wife's words made William's father fall into deep reflection. He finally realized that true happiness was never bestowed by heaven. Only by taking fate into one's own hands could life be changed and cherished things be protected. Subsequently, the father rode his bicycle to find William and apologized for his previous ignorance and stubbornness. But William said he never blamed his father. It was precisely because of his father's persistence that he had the opportunity to go to school. That's why he knew how to use wind power to bring water to the fields. Looking at his son's determined eyes, the father also let go of his inner stubbornness. Under the gaze of the father and son, the bicycle was completely disassembled. The father cut down trees for use as windmill stands, and the villagers also rushed to help, erecting the heavy and tall frames together, fixing each crossbeam, and placing the water pipes into the well step by step. The windmill was finally assembled. William carefully connected each wire and slowly untied the iron wire tying the blades. The windmill rotated with the wind, not only turning out people's hope for life but also blowing the young wind riders' clothes in future. As the generator continued to generate electricity through friction, the current flowed through the wires and charged the battery. Everyone began to dig ditches and canals, waiting for the arrival of the water source. When the battery was fully charged, a hopeful voice interrupted people's work. The father excitedly hugged William, and this vibrant water source not only flowed into the parched land but also awakened people's vitality and despair. The father's experienced eyes were full of pride for William. Green sprouts broke through the ground like newborn hope, bringing not only the dawn of life but also heralding the coming harvest. Because of his invention of the windmill, William not only entered a key middle school but also received a full scholarship and successfully graduated. He later went to Dartmouth College in the United States to obtain a degree in environmental science. This true story tells us that knowledge is the best way to change destiny. Poverty cannot stop a person from pursuing poetry and the distant future.